and welcome to Adjusted Reality, a podcast series brought to you by the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress, where we learn from athletes, celebrities, influencers, and healthcare professionals about how to optimize health in a fun, relatable way. Join me, Dr. Sherry McAllister, as I speak to Monica Reinagel about nutrition and the role it plays in optimizing your health. Now, Monica is a board-certified licensed nutritionist and professionally trained chef. How lucky her family is. Her sane and scientific approach and foodie-friendly advice is regularly featured on Today's Show, CBS News, NPR Morning Edition, and in the nation's leading newspapers, magazines, and websites. Professional affiliations include the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics and the American College of Nutrition. Monica is the creator and the host of the Nutrition Diva podcast, one of iTunes' most highly ranked health and fitness podcasts since its debut in 2008. She is also the co-host with Brock Armstrong on the new Change Academy podcast. Her Nutrition Gpa app was recently named by the New York Times as one of the 4 best diet tracking apps. Monica is the author of not 1, not 2, but 6 books, and her nutrition blog and coaching programs are found at nutritionovereasy.com. I cannot tell you how excited I am to have you on the show, Monica, with me today.
I've been looking forward to it, Sherry, and congratulations on the new podcast.
Thank you so much. Listen, there is no shortage of information and advice and nutrition, and chiropractors around the nation are constantly trying to help their patients be absolutely steadfast in their journey to be the best and most healthiest they can be. But what I want to ask you is, people struggle to still eat healthy. What do you think is so challenging about just trying to eat healthy in today's environment?
Well, like you said, it's certainly not a shortage of information, right? We're flooded with it every day, headlines and newsletters and podcasts like mine. You can know everything that you want to know, and probably a little bit more than you need to know about nutrition and eating healthy. And I think one of the reasons people struggle is because they're focused on the nutrition information, and they don't realize how much of it comes down to being able to change our behavior, to set up our lives in such a way that we can follow through on the information that we have. So we get very focused on the information, and we forget that where the rubber really meets the road is in our ability to implement that information and integrate it into our lives in a consistent way, because just knowing what it is that we should be doing isn't always enough. The real trick is in doing it. And that's, I think, challenging for all of us.
Boy, you couldn't have said it better there, because as a mother of 2 young sons, I often see the implementation, even when it's already prepared in the fridge. I can't get them to choose the fruit over the pretzel. So I totally hear what you're saying. The question for many that are out there is they get confused. In fact, there is often a lot of misunderstanding. It's a common approach because there's so much information that they get between diets and what the best approach is. Tell me from your experience, what are some of the most commonly misunderstood things about eating healthy?
I think one of the ways that people go astray is this idea that that their diets have to be perfect. And if they're not perfect, then they're not doing a good enough job. And so it's this series of kind of jumping on and off various bandwagons, because there's a lot of different flavors of perfect, right? There's plant-based perfect, and there's paleo perfect, and there's so many different things. And people get focused, feel that they have to be 100% compliant with whatever the diet du jour is in order to get the benefit of it. And I think we don't have nearly enough appreciation for the good enough diet, for the diet that we can follow consistently and not just for a few days or a week until it's too hard and unsustainable or it's unrealistic. And then we just kind of go all the way back to nothing, basically. And I wish I could get people on board with just this idea that making small meaningful changes that you can then be consistent about and then build on is going to get you so much further than a big dramatic a project, a 30-day challenge or whatever it is that doesn't last longer than the challenge. We need to be looking at what we can be doing long-term and sustainably, and not worry so much about whether we've got every little detail right. It's just, are we eating enough of those healthy foods to be getting our nutrition needs covered? And, you know, are we not overindulging in too many of the things that we eat, not because they're good for us, but because we enjoy them? But I really believe that it's possible to have a balance between those things. That it is possible to have things that we eat in our diet that we eat purely because we enjoy them. If we don't overdo them and we are balancing them with other healthy choices, to me, that's good enough. And it doesn't come at the expense of enjoyment and pleasure.
You make me smile in so many ways, because even as of today, I said to my husband, it's good enough.
Yes.
It's not going to be perfect. The
It
saying
doesn't need
that,
to be. And yeah, and when
yes,
people don't do anything because they can't do it perfectly, that's where we lose so much opportunity.
it does. It stresses you out. The journey of
Hmm.
10,000 steps starts with one step. The step's
That's right.
not going to be perfect. Monica, it reminds me of with posture. There's small things we can do on a regular basis, because there
Did you
is
see me
just,
just
I,
straighten
I
up when you
did.
said posture?
For those who are listening, she did, and she's got great posture for those who want to know. But the reality is posture is a journey, and there's no such thing as posture perfect. It's
Mhm,
just that journey of trying to really relate back to, because we put our cell phones in our hands and automatically our head goes
mhm,
down. And so with feeding and really allowing our bodies to be energized by the food that we put in our mouths, we have this choice. Is this the best choice? It might not be. But is it going to be the long-term choice? Probably not. So I love the fact that you're saying good enough. Now, for the listeners out there that kind of have that guilty, I've been locked down in COVID-19.
mm,
I've used food almost as a supplement to my maybe some depression.
mhm.
And in the pandemic that the world has seen, tell me from your experience, for those who are looking to be advised for the first time, what should they focus on first? Where would you guide them to be first?
I have spent a lot of time thinking about this question because, of course, there's so many things we could focus on. And in trying to make this approachable for people who don't do nutrition as a full-time job, it's my full-time job. It's okay for me to think about it 40 hours a week, but most people have other full-time jobs, and now they're also homeschooling their kids and telecommuting and everything else. So for people who can't be thinking about it all the time, what is the best place for them to focus their attention? Where are they going to get the biggest return on that investment? It's actually something I've thought a lot about. Actually, earlier when you were reading my introduction, you mentioned a little app called the Nutrition Gpa, which is a tool it's free. You can find it in the App Store, and it is called the Nutrition Gpa. And that app actually grew out of my attempt to answer that question. What should you focus on first? Because we cannot worry about everything clearly. And so, if we're just going to focus on a handful of things. And so I looked at the research literature about what kinds of dietary patterns and food choices are most strongly and consistently correlated with overall health. What are those signal habits that tend to be linked with overall diet quality, better diet quality overall, better health outcomes? Let's focus on those. And if we are focusing on the right handful of things, I feel like a lot of the other details kind of fall into place by themselves. So when I did that big literature review and was trying to figure out, okay, if I were going to ask people to do 5 things a day, what would it be? The number one thing is see if you can eat 5 servings of vegetables most days. And that's a big ask for a lot of people who are not used to it. The average consumption of vegetable consumption in Northern America is about 1.5 servings a day. So that's a big jump up to 5. And even just trying to close that gap can make a big difference. But honestly, and I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people trying to improve their eating habits. And I see this one thing. I mean, there are a few others that we could focus on, but that one thing almost makes more difference than any other thing. So it really, if you could only do one thing, I would try for that, even just to see what it's like once. What does it feel like to have 5 servings of vegetables in a day? And I think the reason it's so powerful is not just because of the nutrients that we get from the vegetables. I mean, they are the most nutrient packed things on the planet, right? We get more nutrients per mouthful, per calorie from vegetables than really from any other food. But it's not just about the nutrients that we get from the vegetables. It's because of what doesn't fit into our diet when we are making the vegetables a priority. If I know I want to have not one, but 2 vegetables with dinner, there's not as much room for the things that the rice, the potatoes, the bread, the things that are, yes, tasty, but not really adding too much. And so I don't have to think about what I'm not eating. I can think about what I do want to eat, start with that. And a lot of those other kind of optional discretionary calories just end up falling off to the side because there's no room for them. And by the same token, if your goal and this is a fun game to play with kids too, if your goal is to get 5 servings of vegetables per day, it's a lot easier if you include a vegetable in your breakfast. And that's just a whole new thought. It's a lot easier if you organize your snacks to involve some sort of raw vegetable. So all of a sudden, instead of a handful of pretzels, I'm having a handful of carrots and guacamole or hummus or something like that. So I've got the benefits of the additional vegetables, but then I've also got some other snacks and junk food that are no longer in my diet because I've replaced them with other things.
Monica, that's so important, and you've totally inspired me. As I hope I'm working with you on seeing the nation pick up and enjoy opportunities to just do small things, and that is
Yeah.
one way to do it. I love the shift of mindset to add veggies into your breakfast, because so many of us do think
Hmm.
carbohydrate-based breakfasts,
Exactly. Yeah.
and that really does help us at least kickstart our day. And then probably just having things prepared in the fridge for my teenagers and those who are out there, just knowing that you can grab and go. And that's probably another piece if you're working at home.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that whole behavioral economics is a huge part of this, and one that we kind of discount. We've probably all read the news stories about the experiments that they've done, that when they put a bowl of fruit next to the cash register in school cafeterias. This is a lot of research that came out of Cornell University a few years back. And they did things like they made the cover for the ice cream cooler where the little ice cream treats were for the kids. They made it opaque so you couldn't see through it. You couldn't actually see what was inside. The kids knew what was in there, but you didn't see it walking by. And then on top of it was a bowl of fruit. And just that one simple change, no nagging, no rules, no prohibitions, they vastly increased the amount of fruit sales in that school cafeteria and decreased the amount of ice cream sales. So just those small shifts in that we can do in our environments can really influence the choices that we make. And it sounds like you're already thinking in this way, trying to set your teenagers up for success. Sometimes, though, we underestimate just how susceptible we ourselves can be to that kind of thing. I know that if I bring the vegetables home and I cut them up and I have them in big, clear Ziploc bags, like you say, cleaned, ready to go. So there's some cauliflower florets and there's some radishes and there's some sugar snaps and a nice variety, not just one big bag of celery, because that gets boring fast, But if it's a colorful variety of stuff and they're peeled and they're ready to go and they're in the front and I can see them, I am so much more likely to eat them than if I have to take all of those steps. Then it's much easier just to grab a handful of nuts or a stack of crackers or whatever it is. But just like we all think that nobody else should text while they're driving, but somehow we feel like we can get away with it. I think we sometimes have that same mentality with these environmental hacks. It's like, oh yeah, I'm sure that helps other people, but I'm way too smart, to benefit from just putting the snacks or the cookies or the treats in an out of the way location or out of sight, or, putting it into a bowl instead of bringing the entire package to the table. I'm too smart for that. But for anybody who thinks that, I invite you to just try it and see what happens. And I'll tell a story that's a little embarrassing for my profession. they totally pranked a bunch of registered dietitian nutritionists at a nutrition conference. They took them into a conference room. It was one of our annual nutrition conferences, and they gave them a whole lecture on these sorts of issues, on the impact of the serving bowl, on how much you will take, the impact of how big your plate is, how much you'll serve yourself, all of that stuff. So they give these nutritionists this whole big lecture. They've got slides and graphs and videos showing this effect in actually, hidden camera videos. They end up the lecture, and it's break time, and they invite them all into the adjoining room, and they've got a little ice cream bar set up as a treat. And the dietitians, having just been primed by this lecture, they hand them their plates. And of course, the ones that were given the big bowls took 40% more ice cream than the ones that were given the small bowls. And then they absolutely denied that the size of the bowl had anything to do with it. So I share that story just by saying, like, none of us are immune to these effects. And it's something so powerful that we can use to our advantage.
What a great story. And, it makes me smile for a few reasons. One is that I purposefully go for a smaller plate when I put my portions out,
Yes.
because I know that if it looks like it's more than I feel like I'm getting enough. The
Mm-hmm.
second part of this is you said something really, I want my listeners to really think about this, how your fridge was set up. Most fridges were set up to keep the vegetables crisp. So you dunk them into that basket.
Right.
And you just really inspired me to think, what if I threw all my condiments in the basket, which we never forget about because we want to have that condiment. So we'll put it out. But if I actually set my fridge out to display the vegetables, almost like a proud moment to remind myself when I open my fridge that I'm a healthy eater, I'm on a great journey, and I feel successful just knowing that organic broccoli that I paid gazillion dollars for is not going to be pulled out in 2 weeks going, oh, I have to throw this out.
Rats, I know that's a very shameful feeling, but I love what you just said about reinforcing your identity as a healthy eater. And then when you see those cues in your refrigerator, on your counter, and you see yourself taking those actions, it really does reinforce that identity. And identity is such a big piece of behavior change. We behave according with our ideas about ourselves. And so, sometimes we feel like we can't change because we don't believe we can change, but sometimes we can start to believe that we can change because we see ourselves changing. And it takes a little bit of, a leap of faith there to start making those actions and to start developing that identity that you can then start to invest in and believe in. But it reminds me of a great quote from James Clear. He wrote a book, a best-selling book last year called Atomic Habits. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it yet, but I
Sounds
highly
great. I'm going
recommend
to
it.
look it up.
But one of my favorite quotes from James Clear is, every action we take or don't take is a vote for the person we want to become. And just framing it that way, realizing like we are creating the future that we want. We are creating the body that we want to have in the future, and the home that we want to have in the future, the relationships, the job, the retirement account. we are creating that by the actions that we take. And I love the focus on the smallness of each individual action being a vote for that. We're about to cast elections down here in the lower continent, and millions and millions, tens of millions of votes will be cast. And in that many votes, it's hard to believe that anyone matters. But of course, we know that each one of our votes does matter, and each one of our actions similarly matters. Even though we make so many choices throughout the day, every time we can vote for the future we want to create, it's worth doing. It's powerful.
That is beautifully said, because as we go through, the a majority of the adult population is overweight in
Mhm.
North America, or they're obese, and dieting is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yeah.
The
And how's that
question,
working out for us?
yeah, why isn't all the time, money, and effort we spend on this problem, when you look at the CDC and the HHS and all of the collective information that we have, both individually and as a group, why are we not having any impact? And then maybe I could ask you what you would suggest, or the best advice for someone who's really struggling just to start that losing weight program. What would you say to them to say, let's get on it?
Well, I actually have very strong opinion about this, about why so much effort spent dieting has been so ineffective in addressing this epidemic of obesity, because God knows we lose enough pounds, as a population, we lose, plenty of weight. The problem is we just gain it right back. And so I've worked with so many people who have lost the same 30 pounds 10 times, they just keep losing it, gaining it, losing and gaining it. So we know how to lose weight. I believe the problem is that we don't know how to weigh less. And all the things that we do to lose weight don't teach us how to live in a life and live in a body, create a lifestyle, create habits, create the mindset that allow us to weigh less. So the minute we stop dieting, we revert to our previous lifestyle and mindset and habits and body weight. But very specifically, just one tip that I could offer anybody, no matter what philosophy or approach or program you want to do, I also believe that we are encouraged to lose weight too quickly, even by the medical arm of our weight loss industry, which is prodigious, right? They are still the standard advice, even the kind of conservative advice, has you losing 1% to 2% of your body weight per week. Okay. So if you are 180 pounds, that's, 2 to 3 pounds a week. That's pretty standard for somebody who's on a weight loss program. In fact, that's considered slow, right? The problem is this is so much faster than people can actually lose body fat. So we're losing weight, body weight, faster than we can lose body fat. And if we're not losing body fat, we're losing lean muscle tissue. We're losing some water. That's kind of a temporary effect. But we lose weight so quickly that we end up losing lean muscle tissue. And that is not helping at all, because that lean muscle is what allows us, keeps our metabolism running and maintains our strength and our flexibility. And so my biggest advice is to slow down the pace of weight loss to match the pace of fat loss. And for most people, that's going to be more like 2% of your body weight per month, not per week. And I know that jaws just hit the floor all over the place, because that is so contrary to everything that we're told. But when you really do the math, at the end of that month, you will have lost the same amount of body fat either way, and if you slow down that pace of weight loss, first of all, it makes your life a lot less unpleasant, because, the kind of restriction that you have to do to be losing 1% to 2% of your body weight every week is ridiculous. So it's a lot less uncomfortable. And I also believe it gives you more time to develop those habits that are going to allow you to sustain that. So I guess my bumper sticker there is that losing weight more slowly is a much faster route to sustainable weight loss.
Well said. And
sorry, I hope that didn't get too numbery.
Oh, no, that was fantastic. I'll tell you why. As you were saying it, you brought to mind the concept of climbing a mountain for me. And that, let's say that the mountain of weight loss was Mount Everest. Well, we're just focused at peaking at the summit, right? That's the whole game, is I made it to Mount Everest. We have this fabulous adventurer that Colin O'Brady, who has summited over 50 peaks, and I think some of the tallest mountains in the world, huge chiropractic advocate. And he has told us through his adventures how important it is to keep your body strong and healthy. But one of the things I recognized as I was watching him in one of the summits is the danger is not in summiting. The danger is coming down the mountain. And so much of us look at this as a summit event. I'm going to lose the weight. But the danger actually comes after you lose the weight.
Yes.
What do you do then? And how you deplete yourself mentally and physically, because, hey, I lost the weight. Look how great I look. And everybody's giving you all these wonderful positive accolades. And it's like being at the top of the Mount Everest, taking your picture and then falling backwards and ending your career, right? So Monica, you really gave our listeners something to, for lack of a better word, chew on.
I hope so.
To really think about this. You have a hugely popular nutrition podcast called Nutrition Diva, and you've had it for over 12 years.
Can you believe it?
It's time flies when you're having so much fun. But you just launched a new podcast, Change Academy. Tell me what led you to doing a new podcast.
Thank you for asking, because I think a lot of people thought I was absolutely nuts. And it was, so I teamed up with my co-host and collaborator, Brock Armstrong, and he is a fitness professional. I am a nutrition professional. And like me, he has a long-running podcast about fitness. But he and I have been working together for a lot of time. We coach people together. And what we realized is that that so much of the work that we were doing was actually not really even about the science of nutrition and the science of fitness. It was about the science of behavior change. And we are both so fascinated by that topic. We've studied it, we apply it. And so we launched this podcast to talk about that and to supplement the information that we are sharing about food and nutrition and fitness and movement and exercise and all of that, with that, what we were talking about earlier, the implementation part of it. How do we translate this information into change in our lives? And it's just been such a pleasure to explore that territory. So that was why we decided we had to add yet one more podcast to the world.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's fantastic, Monica, because you have so many things that can enrich a person's life, from, the nutrition aspect, the 6 books that you've written, several podcasts now, that I think our listeners really can now dig in deep into really learning about themselves, learning about that small change that you brought to focus, and that they can stop beating themselves up because they haven't summited. Their life is the summit. And if they continue that one step at a time and really change their fridge to open it up to be that change that they want it to be, and showcase, I am a healthy eater and I can eat well. I think that's a critical component. I am really, truly pleased to have you on our podcast today. I think our listeners really got a big taste of how they can make some changes in their lives, do it effectively, and broaden the way that they look at things. It reminds me of the famous saying by Dwayne Dwyer, is when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it's where you are, Monica. I want to thank you so very much for your time and your talents for today's podcast. And I hope that we'll be able to meet again on another podcast soon.
I enjoyed our conversation so much.
Thank you so much. I want to thank you for tuning in to Adjusted Reality as we spoke to Monica Reinagel about nutrition and good health. And boy, was she fantastic. This podcast was brought to you by the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress. If you're feeling inspired, and I know I am, to learn more about chiropractic or find a chiropractor near you, you can visit f4cp.org/find-a-doctor. I just want to thank you all for listening with me today. Don't forget to subscribe, share the podcast with friends, and rate and review. We appreciate your support and look forward to checking in with you again soon. I'm Dr. Sherry McAllister with Adjusted Reality. Thank you for listening.